Greetings, friends. Juan Ingriski here, and today I have a very special guest. If you've been following my channel, I do my weekly Russian-Ukraine war update videos on what's happening on the front line. But this week, we actually have someone who is not on the other side of the planet, who is actually down there in the areas that I talk about every week. We have Mr. J or J Fraser, CallSign Kelt. I'm going to call him Kelt just for simplicity purposes. But we have him here. He is here. He's going to be telling us all about his experiences, his time there, and I hope this brings some, from someone who's actually on the front line, someone from a Western country who's actually fighting for Russia, someone who could give us some idea of what's happening there and what's happening on the ground instead of taking it from like Telegram or from a online source, but someone's actually there who's going to be giving us the scoop. So, yeah, let's. What do you? So tell us about yours. I guess first of all, for people, there's probably a lot of people who've maybe seen your interviews with RT or Russians with Attitude, or maybe they've already seen you. But for those who haven't, like this is their first time ever hearing about you, like who is Kel, like CallSign Kel? Who is this guy? Like, why is he so important? Like, who are you?
Yeah, I don't know if I call myself important, but I at least have a bit of a unique perspective on the world. Yeah, so I'm a foreign volunteer from Scotland. Um, I came to Russia a year ago now. Signed up 10 months ago, and since then I've been working in artillery with Piatnashka. Across a couple of different fronts. I was up in Kursk for a while, and I've been down in Donetsk since the end of December, give or take. Um, but it's been a long journey. Um, but I'm happy that I came here still, despite everything.
Yeah, so if for those who've seen, there's obviously, and what I like about you is that you talk about like kind of the big good experience you have, but you also don't shy away from like, and as they say, war is hell, and obviously it's,
Hmm.
that's not all sunshine and rainbows, and obviously the military is obviously there's so much bureaucratic crap in there. I know myself, I was former military in the Air Force in the United States,
Right.
but yeah, definitely it's there's a lot of like just a lot, there's the good and the bad, and what I like is that you kind of bring both to the table here, and but it's very good to at least see that despite all the stuff you've been through, that you still are glad that you're there. And so
Yeah, for sure.
I guess I guess the first question is from people like, well, why did you're like, wow, that when we look at the Western news, we see a lot of like, what when we think about foreign volunteers, we think about like the Reddit Foreign Legion and in Ukraine and all that.
Yep.
But the what but we there's very little like people that's actually from the West that join the Russian side. So I guess a lot of people, you probably been asked this so many times, but like, why did you join?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's something that sort of my motivations have definitely changed a bit over time, and sort of why I'm here has shifted a bit. But at the time, I was basically, I mean, I've supported, well, the Donbass in Russia since 2014, back when it all kicked off. Um, Mostly just because like my older brother basically had a Ukrainian friend who got called up for service, and he rejected, so he's not allowed back in Ukraine. But that sort of put me onto, because it was all over the news. But that sort of put me onto actually looking into things, because there's a you know 2 steps away sort of personal link. Um, when I looked into things back then, I thought sort of, because I consider myself someone who likes to search out the truth for myself rather than just sort of believing what's presented to me at face value. So when I looked into it myself, I sort of thought, maybe the media here is not telling the full picture, not giving a fair shot to the breakaway regions. So I started supporting the Donbass back then. Um, and then sort of interest trailed off on it a bit, because it sort of it goes out the news cycle for a few years, and then the SMO obviously kicked off, and then it became, the biggest thing in the planet, the one thing everybody was talking about. Um, and I supported Russia from the sidelines and sort of uh, would get into a lot of arguments with family members and friends over conflict. And eventually, I just sort of felt that I had to stand up for what I believed in and to fight for what I believed in instead of sitting on the sidelines like I'd been doing for so long. And an aspect of that was also just that I felt life was so boring back home. I didn't have a bad life by any means. I was paid a fair wage. I had things pretty easy. But yeah, just the like I was saying, sort of, you only really get one shot at life. You only have the time on the planet that you have, and I didn't want to spend that just sitting working for a corporation or something. I wanted to do something with my life and sort of bring meaning to my life. Um, so to do so, I decided that yeah, I would stand up for what I believed in, and I would commit my life to a cause. Um, and then yeah, just sort of sold everything I had, uh, booked flights to Russia, and was like, "Yep, this is it."
That's actually I actually really connect with what you said about in a lot of kind of like one of the biggest problems at least in the entire Western world is this kind of like growing sense of atomization, I would call it, from this decadent liberalism that we live under, that I think has robbed us of kind of ancient, like kind of these old sources of meaning that used to bring people's, but now we're like like family and community and stuff and religion, but obviously
Yeah,
the whole our the our leaders that we are ruled under obviously are a bunch of satanic retards, and they
yeah,
and they obviously want to destroy everything that makes us human, basically. And so obviously that's obviously caused a lot of this disconnect. And but one thing is, and so like I definitely had some of that myself. That's actually why I joined the military myself, is to find that sort of because I was the same thing as you. I was like this average kid, nothing, again, raised middle class, but I thought I had to do something, like I thought putting on a uniform would make me feel like something, give some sort of purpose. So I definitely
yeah.
vibe with what you were saying. um and so I guess the first question I have, so that's why you joined. And what in terms of like those motive, like what would you say, like you wanted to fight for a cause, like what is that cause that or values that you hold dear?
Well, there's a sort of a mix of things for me. So I'm a big supporter of Scottish independence from, well, essentially the rule of England, but from the UK formally. Um, so I can definitely empathize a lot with uh, Donetsk and Lugansk as breakaway regions from a state which was, quite blatantly oppressing them and oppressing their culture, their language, and then eventually, physically oppressing them. So that was a factor of it as well. Just a belief that these regions had a right to determine their own freedom. Um, and then also just a big factor of it is that I sort of view this conflict in, you know, as a clash of civilizations almost. So you do have, I mean, the West isn't formally in Ukraine, although we all sort of know that there's Western elements hanging around in Ukraine. But they're definitely strongly backing Ukraine in order to stop Russia and to try and destroy what Russia stands for. Um, and I view the values of the civilization that Russia is building to be much more important or more valuable, not just to myself, but to the world. Um, and just simple things like preservation of culture and history, and not being ashamed of your own culture and history, as we're sort of taught in the West. Um, so, yeah, that sort of mix of both empathizing with breakaway regions and also the simple fact that I think that Russia stands in I mean, and Russia's not perfect by any means, but I think that Russia is heading in the right direction and has a government that wants to take things in the right direction, culturally speaking, uh, and just in the values that they consider important, like things like religion. I'm a Orthodox Christian convert. Not so Orthodox Christian these days, but I was at the time I came over. um, so yeah, I think it's basically an agreement with what Russia stands for, essentially, versus what the West stands for. And what the West stands for is, you know, everybody being an economic unit or a wage slave, with gay pride parades kicking about on the streets, and your people being slowly replaced over time. Um, and that's something that I quite frankly think should be destroyed.
Oh yeah, no, and that's one thing I say to a lot of people who, might not have any connection to this conflict, but like, why at the very least you should, there needs to be some sort of counterweight to the dominant, what they call the gay or the globalist American empire, and or yeah, the globalist American empire, the
Mm.
or just the general, obviously the EU's part of it as well. It's just the entire this blob, whatever you want to call it, wokeism, cultural Marxism, globalism, whatever, is this it's basically everything that makes us human they want to get rid of, and just turn us into this unidentifiable mass of people who just live in pods and you eat slop, and you're
Yeah,
just this little with no culture identity. And the and even I'm not like like for Russia, I don't think Vladimir Putin's like some sort of like white savior or something where he's gonna like come in and he obviously obviously he's a bit of a boomer himself, but
yeah,
but he's not going to be the one who's going to save us. It's going to be up to us. But I do think there needs to be some sort of counterbalance, as you said. So I agree with you in terms of like just making sure that America and just the West in general can't just impose this antithetical, anti-human ideology on the entire world. Like if they could be even if Russia or China are not necessarily pro West, or in terms of like the people, they're like pro
mm,
white or whatever, and they are at the very they're looking out for their own people's interests. But because they're doing that,
yeah,
they're doing it, they're fighting against this evil ideology, which is what we share as well. So I do definitely agree with that
yeah,
reasoning with that. um, and so now, in terms of so when you got there, how I guess this next question is for people who who like, how was the process of like as a foreigner, especially a Western foreigner, how was the process of joining Russia, like the Russian army, like how did that process go? And you could also talk about like the various different types of contracts and like which ones are like the
yeah,
best, and which ones should you go for, and what are the pros and cons of each. So I know that's a multi-layered question. So I guess first, like, how was the process of joining as a Western foreigner? How is that process? And then we could go talk about the various contracts.
yeah. So it's when I came over anyway. It's basically an absolute nightmare because there is just no information online at all about how to join. Um, and Russia, for to prevent any sort of conflict with a Western state, like minor diplomatic issue, essentially, Russia is not willing to hand out information to Westerners on how to join. Because if Russia's directly handing out information to Westerners saying, oh, here's how you come over, here's how you fight for us, and they were to be caught doing that, obviously, Western states are going to take that pretty poorly. Um, so the information surrounding it was just incredibly scarce when I was looking into it. I got in contact with the embassy in London, the Russian embassy, before I came over and asked them, and the only information they would give was go to an enlistment office, and it's not quite as simple as that. So when I first came over, I traveled for about 2 months before signing up. And in that time, basically what happened was in the RWA Telegram group chat, there just happened to be an American guy who typed in there and basically said he was signing up. And I was like, oh, well, I'll DM him. I'll see what his plan is, because I was in Russia with the intent of signing up, but I had no clue how to actually do it. Got in contact with him. He ended up getting pulled in by the FSB because he accidentally took a photo of an FSB building in Donetsk without knowing what it was. But when he was pulled in by the FSB, they basically said to him that, like, do you know anyone else? Like, because he mentioned he was there to join the military, and they were sort of like, wow, do you know anyone else is doing this? Like, who are you in contact with? He mentioned my name, and the FSB was like, oh yeah, we know that guy. Hand him over Piatnashka's contact details. He'll probably do well there. So from there, this American guy sent me over the contact details for Piatnashka. I got in contact directly, and basically just went through the recruitment process over Telegram. But yeah, that's essentially one way to do it, especially for PMC groups. You just need to contact them directly over Telegram, their website. Some of them still have WhatsApp, though I think WhatsApp got banned here 2 weeks ago. And you just contact them directly. They'll ask you for a load of information. They'll ask you to send your passport to them, like photos of your passport, which a lot of people are very reluctant to do. But you need to understand that these PMC groups don't know who they're dealing with here. You could be anyone. And obviously, it's a big security risk for them taking in Westerners, because could just be undercover agents working for one agency or another. So you've got to basically send them over your passport. They check you out, run some background checks, basically send everything to the FSB. And then they security clear you, and they'll tell you essentially, usually it's go to Rostov, like Rostov on Don, because it's the nearest city to the Donbass in mainland Russia. And then they'll just come, pick you up, take you through, and get your contract signed. For me, it was slightly different because Piatnashka was deployed in Kursk at the time. So I just hopped on a train from Moscow, went straight there, signed my contract there. For the Ministry of Defense, it's a lot different. The main problem is language. So most PMC groups will, well, not all, but most PMC groups will take people regardless of how good their language is, especially here in Piatnashka, because we have a lot of foreigners here. So, for instance, in Storm, we have full units of Chinese, Indians, Colombians, Cubans, Azerbaijani, a few different nationalities. So they're very used to dealing with foreigners here. So they're not so bothered about the level of your Russian language, because they're basically just going to try and fit you in with people that speak the same language as you. And then, you're still going to need to learn Russian at some point, but it doesn't matter quite so much. For the MOD, basically, the way the MOD works with their contracts is that every region in Russia has a quota of how many people should be signing contracts every single month, to go to the SMO, which is where all the, like, how there's massive differences in sign-on bonuses. So in some places your sign-on bonus is only going to be something like 1 million rubles, which is still a fair bit of money. It's more than $10,000. But in other regions, your sign-on bonus can be up to like 5 million rubles. So the reason for those differences is it's different regions trying to hit that quota that they need to get to. So they're basically saying, like, throwing money at people basically and saying, come and sign for us. Now that interplays with foreigners coming over because it's if you don't speak fluent Russian and you come over here, you're going into a hot conflict, um, and you're not going to be with people that speak English. I mean, well, if you're like American, you're not going to be with people that speak English. If you're French, you're not going to be with people that speak French, so on and so forth. Um, so you're essentially a bit of a liability because of your lack of language skills. So if a region isn't desperate for people to sign contracts, then they basically impose quite strict rules on what level of Russian language you need to be able to sign a contract. So you can, Moscow's a big one. As far as I'm aware, Moscow has, as of today, started taking foreigners again. But uh, up until today, from roughly February time, Moscow had stopped taking foreigners at all because they were hitting their quota. So most foreign people that come here fly into Moscow, turn up to an enlistment office, and then just get told no. Like, because if you can't even, like, there is an official language test, but if you can't even like have the interaction to get to the language test, then they'll just turn you away at the door. Um, so then there's a big difficulty because it's not like these regions advertise online saying we're taking foreigners, we're not taking foreigners. You need X level of Russian language to sign up here. So basically, what you have to do is just find phone numbers for enlistment offices in different regions, um, phone them up, uh, and just ask and just go, look, my Russian's, you know, pretty poor, decent, whatever level you're at. Tell them that over the phone and then see what the recruiter says back to you. And then from there, I mean, Moscow has amazing travel links. So, and also flights in Russia are ridiculously cheap. So you just fly, take a train, whatever, to these random regions, um, go there, and if the recruiter was telling the truth over the phone, at least, you'll be allowed to sign a contract. Um, so, yeah, for PMCs, like I did, basically just got to get in contact with them over Telegram. Um, the Ministry of Defense, I always advise everybody phone ahead of time. Make sure they actually take foreigners before you make some journey out into the middle of nowhere. Turn up at their door and they just say, "Yeah, nah, go home." Um, but beyond that, it's not too complex of a process, despite how little information there is. It is basically just turn up at their door, um, and sign on the dotted line.
And is there like so basically for like kind of these PMCs like Pinashka and sorry for my mispronunciations. I can't even pronounce some English words. I'm a bit of a retard myself, but so I might butcher a lot of things. But in Pinashka, so would you say it's just kind of more easier for someone who might be not fluent in Russian and is a Western foreigner, and that's why going into these kind of PMCs is more of a easier process, and then the MOD is kind of more like kind of official, not official, but yeah, like a bit more kind of more,
Well, yeah, yeah.
and that's why. And is it like so? Besides language, is it also just like, well, like let's say you're a Westerner, but you're like fluent in Russian. Like, is there also limits on like, oh, you're because I know Russia has something called like friendly and unfriendly countries. So like, I would understand like if
Yeah.
a Chinese person or someone from like the former, so like maybe like someone from like Kazakhstan or or
Hmm.
something, or Cuba, as you mentioned. There's like a few countries that are like very friendly to Russian, having citizens from them, even though they're not Russians, they're probably good. But as a Westerner, is there like, for at least for MOD stuff, is there like just a general like, oh, like, okay, you might be fluent, you might even have military experience, but like, you're a Westerner and we don't like, are they kind of restrictive on that, or like how like kind of loose are they in terms of like, oh yeah, like, I mean, obviously they let people in, you're there, but well, at least they let
Yeah.
people serve, but are they kind of like more, do they just like look into you more, or is it like a general like like how is that looking like besides language and such?
Yeah. So with the MOD, basically what will happen is you sign that contract. Let's say you sign the contract on June 1st. They're not going to send you to training on June 2nd. You're either going to be told go find a hotel nearby, or sometimes they'll have dorm rooms at the enlistment offices, and you'll stay there for eh, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, basically just waiting on the FSB security clearing you, so that they know you who you say you are, for one, and they know like exactly what you've done in the past to try and you know just double check that you're honest with your intentions. And then from there, you'll be sent to training. Um, the big thing with like Westerners have the exact same opportunities as like someone from a friendly country, like yeah, a Kazakh or whoever. We have the exact same opportunities as they do. The only uh, bar to any of that is your level of Russian language. Like, if a Kazakh comes over that speaks shit Russian, then they're going to get sent the exact same place as a Westerner that speaks pure Russian. But if you come over as a Westerner and you have like great Russian proficiency, even without former military experience, you're probably going to get picked up by a pretty decent unit and get to a pretty decent spot. Um, because basically, the way it sort of works, um, you're assigned a unit when you sign your contract, but you're not actually going to go to that unit the majority of the time. What's going to happen is you're going to get sent to a large training camp that covers a lot of different units, and there will be officers and commanders kicking about there who will basically take a look at guys in training and be like, "Yeah, we want that guy," or "No, we definitely don't want that guy." So as long as you have that proficiency in Russian, as long as you keep your head down and do what you're supposed to in training and don't get drunk or anything and stick to the rules, essentially, um, you have pretty good opportunities, the same as any foreigner from a friendly country, to be able to go to, you know, drones or a better unit. For instance, I know a friend of mine, an American, came over in January or February time, can't remember, a while back anyway. Um, but basically, he was fluent in Russian, American guy, came over. He had a friend in the naval infantry, and he just went straight there. And he's in the naval infantry now, which is I mean, naval infantry is a bit of a misnomer considering how it gets used these days. But there's certainly a lot better units, the naval infantry units, than say your bog standard storm unit. So it basically all does come down to that language, um, regardless of where you're from. The only thing that's gonna happen because you're from a Western country instead of a friendly country is that you'll be held up for a few weeks whilst they try and clear you. Um, well, yeah, the FSB security clears you basically. Um, but even then, a friend of mine, he, I think he signed up in Moscow. Uh, can't quite remember. He signed up somewhere anyway, and he was basically sent to a dorm, and he was there for a week, and then they said, "Nah, sorry, mate, you're not signing a contract here. Off you go," because of his security clearance. But he just went to St. Petersburg and signed a contract there, and they security cleared him totally fine and let him in, which doesn't really make any sense to me. But yeah, it is just that security clearance is going to hold you up as a foreigner, which is something to bear in mind. Because even if it's not you, but if you have a family member, because they do ask for all of your family's details, where they live, where they work, um, all those sorts of things. So if you even have a family member that's, say, working, not even like high up, but working somewhere within the American Ministry of Defense or the French Foreign Legion, or works in, even if it's something simple like um, works in engineering or something, but for government facilities, um, then you're probably going to end up running into problems. And so that's something to bear in mind. Is just that that security clearance, it doesn't just apply to you. You've got to think about what you've been around in the past, who you're still in contact with, things like that. Um, but yeah, it is. We have the same opportunities as friendly country foreigners, as long as you speak the language.
That's actually very interesting about like I would assume they would be more but it's kind of actually pretty cool that they're like still able to bring in people. And yeah, I know the whole kind of security clearance like we have the kind of the same thing here in the at least in America. Like whenever you want to join the military, they and some of the questions are very like duh. It's like have you ever like joined like a terrorist group with the intention of overthrowing the United States government? It's like well yes. I mean who would say yes? But anyway, um, but yeah, no, that's actually very. And in terms of like like, are you able to? You mentioned about units, but like where they just assign you, but then they don't really actually assign you to that. Like you don't actually go to that one.
Yeah,
But what about jobs? Like, what if you're like, hey, I want to be like like a drone person or an artillery as you are in, or actually, I just want to just be an infantryman or I want to be like a job like there's like various jobs. Are you able to choose what
yeah,
job you get, or is it just like they just throw you in whatever job they need you?
yeah. So you are officially speaking allowed to request a job when you put the pen to paper on your contract. You're allowed to request where you want to go. But if you don't have prior experience, you're pretty much always going to be sent into an assault unit in infantry. And that's not, it's not Russia like picking on foreigners or anything. The simple facts of the matter are that those are the units that take the most casualties. Um, those are the units that you can train someone up to go to fairly quickly. Those are the units that are needing the men replaced. Like if you're Russian as well and you sign up, if you don't have good contacts, because Russia is very much a country of who you know rather than what you know. Um, so if you don't have those contacts and you're Russian and you sign up, you're going to be sent to an assault unit as well. You're basically, if you don't have prior experience, you're just there to fill in a hole, and those holes are most frequently in assault units purely because they take the most casualties. If you have prior experience, and it doesn't even need to be like formal experience per se. It's not like you need to be part of some mythical drone unit in the U.S. military. But if you have a lot of experience with just commercially flying drones, or even something simple like 3D printing, like a lot of parts for drones are 3D printed, um, simple things like that can go a long way. But again, as long as your language level is fairly good. Um, because if not, you're essentially just going to be sent into an assault unit, storm, um, which is um, not to say too much, but your survival rate of being sent there, especially with not speaking Russian, is not going to be too high.
Yes, I would assume so. It's hard enough knowing what's whatever kind of knowing people, knowing what everyone's talking about in the middle. But it's hard enough just knowing. But then like having all this craziness happen. But then it's probably especially more confusing when you literally have no idea what the fuck anyone's saying and you're getting like droned and
Yeah,
everything. So I would assume it would be pretty insane. But now in terms of contracts, there's like various, assume contracts. I know there's a difference between like an MOD contract and then like maybe the contract of PMC. Can you go over
yeah,
like what is like the various types of contracts, the pros and cons, uh, and such?
yeah, sure. So there's basically three kinds of contracts here, but one of them is called bars contracts or Dobrovolческий corpus, which is volunteer corps, basically, is what it translates to. Those contracts can only be signed by Russian citizens. They're the best kind of contracts, but you can only do that if you're a Russian citizen. So they're not worth talking about for the purposes of this conversation. So you're basically then left with a PMC contract versus an MOD contract. Now, there's a lot of benefits and drawbacks to both. The biggest thing with PMC contracts is that you are not entitled to citizenship, Russian citizenship, um, which is a big thing for most, I mean, well, especially Westerners coming over here. It doesn't matter so much because you get here in PNH, we have a lot of, as I said, like, Chinese or Colombians, Cubans, Kazakhs, countries that are friendly to Russia. You can come here, you can serve your time, and you can go home. Well, Kazakhs can actually, but for the other countries like Colombia and Cuba, a lot of Africans come over as well, just for the money, because the money here is, I mean, compared to Western wages, it's not amazing. But compared to wages in Colombia, Cuba, Africa, Brazil, anywhere in South America, basically, the wages you get paid here go a very long way back home. So a lot of these people come over purely for money. So for them, the whole not being able to get citizenship in a PMC contract doesn't really matter. Um, the problem for Westerners coming over here is that more often than not, um, if you are a Westerner who comes to fight for Russia, you are not going to be welcome back in your country again. Um, whether that's formally in law, like in the UK, there's a law. It's a very obscure law that nobody actually gets tried under, but it says you're not allowed to sign up for foreign militaries, even if there's not a law against it. You can imagine as an American who fought for Russia going back to the USA, the government is going to be a little bit suspicious of you. Um, and they're at the very least going to harass you a lot. So that basically leaves you with you're gonna, I mean, and most people that come over here and want to fight for Russia, of course, well, Westerners anyway, of course, want to live in Russia after. If you're gonna fight for a country, if you're gonna potentially give your life for a country, of course, it's going to be a place that you're wanting to actually live in. Um, so yeah, not getting citizenship is a massive drawback for Westerners coming over here, which is why I basically my advice to people is if you want citizenship, then you've got to like well, if you want to stay in Russia afterwards, if you can't go home, you're gonna need to go to the MOD. If citizenship for you isn't so much of an issue, and I mean you can still live in Russia without citizenship. You can still get a residency permit. I'm currently going through the application process for becoming a refugee, which is a little bit ironic considering some of my political viewpoints. But yeah, basically because I need political asylum from the UK because if I return there, I will be prosecuted for serving Russia. So if citizenship for you is like number one top priority, you're gonna need to go to the MOD. That's like the big difference between the two types of contracts. Um, but the problem with the MOD is that there is just a million other things that are a lot worse than PMCs. I mean, benefits of the MOD, obviously citizenship, as I said. Also, sign-on bonuses. PMCs don't get sign-on bonuses. Um, we are just paid our monthly wage. MOD, you're gonna get given uh, at minimum like $12,000 for signing up. At maximum $55,000 to $60,000 just for signing up, and then you're gonna have your monthly wage on top of that. Um, so yeah, sign-on bonuses are a big benefit with the MOD. Um, all the paperwork stuff, not just citizenship, like getting your veteran status sorted, big benefit with the MOD. You get like a lot of like little things that really add up. Like your kids get free schooling. You get your kids get better choices of which schools to go to. Um, Free public transport. Um, Special pension, not pension. What's the word? Mortgage. Special mortgage rates if you served in the MOD, which are a lot better than any mortgage rate you'll get from a bank for a house here. And then, yeah, pension. So you get paid. It's not much. It's something like give or take. It's like 4,000 rubles, which is give or take $40 every single month as part of your like military pension. And like every year that you serve, more money gets added onto that. Um, so yeah, that like paperwork side of thing, even just having like a very basic paperwork trail is a lot better in the MOD. Like for instance, here where I am, they lost my first contract. I'm on my second contract now, but when they went to change the details, like when I was signing my second contract, they went to change the details over for my first contract. They just have no record of me ever having served here. Um, so that's a problem you're not going to have with the MOD is they have a very solid paper trail of everything. You're also going to get things like your military ID sorted, which is something that everybody in Russia needs is a military ID. Well, every male anyway, for conscription, basically. So getting that sorted, someone else doing it, like I can get it sorted as well, but I need to do it myself. Whereas if I was in the MOD, they're just gonna sort all that for you. So that paperwork side of things in the MOD also significantly better. Um, but besides that, there is not many upsides to the MOD. Over in PMCs, we have much closer relationships with our own command, in at least from the guys that I've spoken to have served in the MOD. Our command cares about us and our lives a lot more. Um, as a PMC, we are contracted to grow the main intelligence directorate rather than the MOD. So the MOD can give us missions and tell us, you've basically got to go on some suicide charge because, what does the MOD care about some random PMC guys? Um, but because we're not contracted to the MOD, we have an ability to refuse any stupid missions. What else do we have better here? Even like basic things like rotations. Um, in the MOD, you will be lucky if you're rotated out, more than once a year. In PMCs, we're rotated every 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm at the front 2 3 weeks, get rotation, back in Donetsk. Uh, well, I mean, I don't have any documents, so it makes things a bit more annoying for me. But if you did have documents, you get rotated back here. You're back here for, a week. You can just go out into the city. You can do what you want. You just have pretty much free reign over what you want to do. And, that sort of recovery and rest time is a big factor in war, I would say. Just being able to have that downtime to yourself away from the front. So being able to get that every 2 to 3 weeks instead of being able to get that every 9 months, say, makes a huge difference in your life. Trying to think of what else. But I mean, there's little things like the way our pay works. Um, in the MOD, you are paid two different rates, basically. So you're paid your basic pay, which is around 40,000 rubles a month, so $400, give or take. And which is, $400 a month is not very much to live on. I mean, if you're in the military, you're not going to have many expenses. But say you had a family back home you're trying to support or something, um, and then you have your second rate, which is it's called. I don't actually know what it's officially called, but it gets the name for it here is SMO pay, basically. So when you're in the SMO zone, you're at the front. You're not even necessarily at the front, but you're at least on a base in the SMO zone. You're somewhere around. You're going to get paid an extra around 180,000 rubles a month on top of that. So that's basically 75% of your salary is dependent on you being in the SMO zone. If you're in training before you sign up, you're not getting that SMO pay. If you're injured and you're in a hospital, you're not getting that. If you're like for any reason, like even sometimes guys will get taken to do like drone classes in Moscow and stuff. You're not going to be getting your SMO pay. If you're on holiday, you're not getting your SMO pay. So that's 75% of your pay gone. Whereas PMCs, we are paid a flat rate, 220,000 rubles a month, every month, paid cash in hand as well. A big problem with the MOD is them either not paying you for months or paying you wrong loads of times. With PMCs, we are paid cash in hand once a month, which also means the maximum amount of time that you can be at the front is 1 month precisely, because you have to be rotated out to get your salary. But because you're paid cash in hand, you can stand there, you can count that money, make sure it's right. And if it's not, you can argue your case for why it's wrong. If you're in the MOD and they're paying you wrong, you're going to be going through a million different loops of bureaucracy, paperwork, and trying to figure out who to actually contact over these things. Um, so, yeah, there's a lot of drawbacks to going to the MOD. I mean, even like when I signed up for Pianashka, for instance, I was given a list of jobs, and they just said, "What do you want to do?" So they offered me infantry, tanks, air support, drones, or artillery. Um, and the guy that recruited me was an artilleryman, so he basically pushed me towards going to artillery, which was a good decision. Um, but yeah, I was offered that outright. I could have chosen what I wanted. Um, but as I said before, with the MOD, it's basically you're going to sign your contract, you're going to be sent to a training camp, and if you don't have prior experience, you're getting sent to Storm. Um, so even the simple fact that you can choose what job you're going to be doing, um, that can be a difference of, you know, magnitudes in casualty rates, for what you're looking at here. So yeah, it's a difficult choice. I would always, I mean, a lot of people. Other benefits of PMC contracts, actually, we can, our contracts are 6 months. Well, your first contract is 6 months always. After that, you're given a choice of 3, 6, or 12 months to renew your contract. So you get to choose your own contract length, basically. 6 month contracts for your first contract, because basically it's, if you're to do a 3 month contract for your first contract, the amount of time that you're going to spend in training, um, by the time you finish training to then that 3 months ending, it's just like a wasted investment of time in you, which is why the first is always 6 months. But um, yeah, if you decide you don't like it or whatever, you can just, basically write on a piece of paper saying any reason you want, take it to your headquarters, hand it in, and you can leave that contract at any time you want. Um, it is You're not legally bound to finishing that contract. You will lose pay for the month that you, exit the contract, basically, but you can leave that contract at any time. With the MOD, you are bound to that contract for officially 1 year. If you take citizenship during your contract, um, from the presidential decree on mobilization, in September 2022, it says that no contract soldier can leave the armed forces unless for, severe injury or, death. So, that the wording of it actually doesn't specify that you need to have citizenship, but, basically the way it works is that if you take citizenship during that MOD contract, you are going to be in that contract until at least the end of the SMO, because it's until that presidential decree gets removed, basically. And that presidential decree will not be changed until the SMO is over. So you're signing up for a year of your life, or until the end of the SMO, which, who knows when that could be.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a pretty difficult, choice to make. However, if you go to the MOD and you, don't take citizenship during your contract, you will be released at the end of your 12 months. It might run over by 1 or 2 months. That quite often happens just because of, um, basically paperwork and bureaucracy. These things never get done on time. But you will be released from your contract if you do not take citizenship during the contract. Um, Even if you don't take citizenship during your contract, you are still entitled to citizenship. You still served, you were still in the military, you've still done everything you need to be allowed citizenship. So you can just take your military documents after you finish serving to a migration office. Prove to them you've served, and you will be not handed citizenship on the spot. There's a whole load of forms to fill out, but you will be able to get that application process started anyway. So, yeah, PMC contracts are short. We got a lot of rotations. We have a much better choice of jobs. Our pay is, give or take the same. It's a bit easier to sort out issues. Big drawback is we don't get those sign-on bonuses though. Um, our missions are a lot better. Our command cares about us a whole hell of a lot more. Um, but yeah, you're not getting that citizenship, um, which is the main issue. MOD, yeah, your documents are going to be done a lot better. All that paperwork is going to be there. There's a lot better sort of support systems in place, even if they are very bureaucratic to get these things sorted. Um, but yeah, you take that citizenship during contract, you're stuck till the end of the SMO. And also the chances you get sent to Storm are astronomically high. So in the end, the differences between the contracts really just come down to that citizenship issue. It's a matter of whether you're so desperate to get citizenship that you're willing to forego all the benefits that PMCs have. And for a lot of Westerners, the case is going to be you need that citizenship. So, yeah, generally, I advise if basically citizenship, go with the MOD. If you care about your life more than you care about getting the citizenship, I would advise going to a PMC.
Thanks for going way. Well, that was really good detail on both. That was really good. Thank you. And just a quick. Well, you mentioned about bars, and I know that doesn't really apply for foreigners, but can you quickly kind of talk about I'm kind of interested in I know that's just for people who have Russian citizenship already, but you mentioned that's kind of the best contract you could do theoretically. Why is that? What is so good about a bars contract?
Yeah. So, and I mean, if you, it's relevant for people that want to come over here in some ways, because if you come over here, um, you go to the MOD, you finish your contract, and you get your citizenship, you are then a Russian citizen. And if you want to continue serving, those options of bars contracts are now open to you. Um, and yeah, I advise people, even if you're not bothered about the whole being extended until the end of the SMO thing, still leave your contract and get citizenship, because you can get that nice juicy sign-on bonus second time by leaving, getting citizenship, and signing again. But bars contracts, yeah, so they're volunteer corps units, um, which covers um, there's the Cossack brigades. Even if you remember from a long while ago now, when people were talking about the Gazprom PMCs, Patriot and stuff, they're volunteer corps units now. Um, Piatnashka is actually officially a bars slash volunteer corps unit now, but they still allow foreigners to come here. We just sign PMC contracts, whereas Russians here sign bars contracts. So the benefits of these volunteer corps units are that they are the perfect middle ground in between the MOD and PMCs. Um, they still have their own independent command. They can still basically not do what they want, but if they get told to do something ridiculous, they can refuse that. Um, they get the sign-on bonuses from the MOD, but they're also going to have the shorter rotation cycles. Bars units are also a lot more selective on who gets into them, which is a big thing. that you want to be able to rely on the people that you're fighting alongside. Which, you know, when a country is 3.5 years deep into a war, they're not particularly bothered so much about the quality of people that are signing up. So you going to the MOD, you might not get put with guys that you're gonna be willing to 100% trust with your life when it comes down to it. Whereas guys that are in bars contracts, they're quite selective with it. So you're going to be put alongside guys that are decent people, and also have a lot of experience and are well trained. Um, so yeah, the main thing with them is you're retaining that independent command the PMCs get, still getting all the benefits like veteran status, sign-on bonuses, your pension sorted, so on and so forth from MOD contracts. Um, and I struggle to really see any drawback of it. Is the thing, like, it's essentially the MOD minus the MOD's problems, because it is sort of PMC esque almost. Like Pianachka is now. We changed. We were all still a PMC when I first came here. We switched over to becoming a bars unit in March of this year, um, and nothing has actually like fundamentally changed here. We still operate the exact same way. Um, we still have the freedom that we had before. Um, we've still got all the benefits of being a PMC. However, we also now, well, not me personally, but the Russians that are here also now have all those benefits of the MOD because, like, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after we became a bars unit, the general in charge of us came down to the base and basically said, "Here's my phone number. If any of you guys need like veteran status sorted or anything like that, write to me on Telegram. We'll get it sorted." Everybody's, able to get that veteran status dead easy now. Um, yeah, it's basically just got that perfect blend of the two other situations.
And how does I'm actually kind of interested. You know, you mentioned how like one upside of being in like maybe bars or a like a Pinashka in terms of PMC, like PMC, is that you're able to tell like if some like big wig at the MOD is like do this retarded thing, you could say no. But obviously, like one big thing about armies is like they're about the chain of command and such in terms of like you're like in following orders. So like how does it work in terms of like where's the line like between you are able to have flexibility and like if let's say some generals like, hey, I want to use um your unit to help supplement my assault or offensive in this area, like where's the difference between you having to kind of support the MOD's units because it was an order from some general, let's say, versus, well, actually, let me talk, this is let's discuss it, let's have a discussion about it. And so it's like, where's that line?
Yeah, well, I think it's a line that the Russian government wants to um, move a lot further in their favor. The Russian government does not like PMCs. Officially speaking, PMCs are illegal under Russian law. They're basically just allowed to operate just now because they are useful. But they are basically seen as problematic because they have this ability to deny orders. And all of that goes on, it's above my station. Um, but, um, you know, it's basically a matter of our command looking at things and saying, is this risk worth the reward that's going to come out of it here? Um, and if it's not, they are going to tell those generals to get the fuck. Um, but it is definitely, yeah, that issue with there being an official chain of command definitely does come up quite a lot, which I think is why the Russian government is so annoyed sometimes. And, I think it's also a big reason why Pinashka was changed into a volunteer corps unit was because they wanted us to have a little bit less independence. Because, yeah, sometimes in war, you've just got to follow orders. That's the way things should work. The problem is, and yeah, I'm quite open that I have this problem, is that I think the people that are giving these orders, quite frankly, do not care about the lives of their soldiers quite often. So it is hard to find a reasonable balance between the ability to deny those orders and also at what point are you detracting from the military by denying those orders. um, and it's a line that most certainly is in our favor as soldiers on the ground for Pianeshka. It's most definitely in our favor because it protects our lives. Um, but it could at times also be holding back the war effort if people are, refusing to follow orders because they think the general that gave them doesn't have the highest IQ.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally understand. Like, leadership makes a huge difference in, like, in terms of, like, just even like if nothing else changes, like just having new leadership literally is like night and day. I remember when I like
Yeah,
in the squadron I was in the Air Force, like, when I came in, we had one set of leadership, and then they came out like almost like a couple months after I came in, and the new ones were so much like, much more better, much more understanding, and it just made a huge night and day difference. So leadership is very important in terms of it can
yeah,
make it like literally make your life either like even if everything else stays the same, it could literally make the difference between like you having a pretty good time, well, quote unquote good time, and as much as good time you could have in a war zone, and versus
yeah,
versus like literally having it be a living hell. Uh, and so yeah, no, and and obviously like but yeah, but one thing I wanted to mention in terms of your actually specific job. So you're an artilleryman, and one question I've always been interested in
yeah,
is that I've always wanted to ask is as they say, artillery is the king of the battlefield, or I think that's what the saying was. But it was the kind of yeah the kind of the this king star for a long time. But now, obviously, now what everyone always focuses on for this war is drones, because this is the first large scale conflict that's
yeah,
using drones. And they've kind of like shaped this whole thing. I think they're one of the main reasons why we have this static conflict as we are right now. But as an artilleryman, I wanted to ask, what is, uh, how is, in this age of war, the war that you're currently fighting in, how is artillery like important in terms of this? Where before they were used to suppress, like obviously the drones now suppress infantry assaults and maybe armored assaults, and they could attack buildings. Yeah, for bigger things they use fab bombs. So where does artillery fit into all that? You have drones, you have fab, like
yeah,
why would someone use artillery to strike a position versus if they had to drone it versus bombing it with fabs? And then like have drones made it more redundant, or have they enhanced it? Like what is the relationship between, like, say, artillery and drones? Like, have they enhanced it?
yeah,
And just kind of in general, like, what's artillery's role in this conflict, like, and such?
yeah, yeah. So in Russia, the like every single different uh, section of the military has its own like slogan. Like I think the missile forces, I think theirs is "After us, only silence," which I quite enjoy. But artillery, ours is Bog Vaini, which is just God of War. Um, and I think artillery still does have its place as God of War. Um, the thing that people don't realize with drones is you are only ever going to see a successful drone strike. Nobody is posting footage of how many failures it takes to get that one success. I'm quite close friends with our drone guys here because all of them speak English. But yeah, basically, the chat is that you expect to lose around 80% of your drones without getting near the target. All of your drones that you actually get to the target, you're still expecting like maybe 15% of those are going to fail to hit the target. So there is this huge gap um, of basically, the perception of how effective drones are, purely on the basis that drones have cameras attached to them. Artillery shells don't. Um, so drones have definitely had a massive effect. They're definitely the most important thing here. But one of the main things that drones do, and actually, I mean, maybe around 90% of what our drone guys here do, is they just fly Mavic drones, which are like small quadcopter drones with a camera attached to them. And they just fly Mavic drones to correct our artillery fire. That's around 90% of what they do. So the actual like munitions side of drones has a lot smaller effect than people think. Whereas where drones really come into play is the simple fact that you have constant surveillance across basically the entire battlefield. So the way artillery worked back in the day was you pick a grid square and you just spam shells at it basically. Nowadays, what we do is we just sit in our blindage waiting on a drone operator over the radio, and he will just say, "Got a target." Give us the coordinates of the target, and we'll live stream his drone footage to our commander, and we will basically work in a much more precise manner than artillery has been used in the past. Because we know exactly where our gun sits and we know exactly where our target is. We will, I mean, it's pure maths, so it doesn't account for things like wind direction and things. So your first shell is never going to hit the target. However, because we have a drone flying, that drone operator can just go like either live stream the footage, send a screenshot, or just radio us and go, okay, you were 50 meters left and you were, 30 meters too far. And then we will just adjust on our sights on the artillery, send another shell. And we basically work as, you know, precisely as possible now, which on an artillery piece, if you get told you missed by 5 meters, you're not going to be able to adjust 5 meters because artillery is not designed for doing that. Um, but yeah, basically the way artillery works now is just a drone operator sitting watching where we're firing, relaying to us what's happening, and we're adjusting, correcting fire, trying to get as precise on that target as possible. And an artillery shell will do a whole lot more to a target than an FPV drone with an RPG rocket duct taped onto it will. Um, so we definitely still have a major part to play, as as far as towed and self-propelled guns go. Um, like, we are constantly working counter battery, enemy drone teams positions. We find those, hit them. Mortars, we're going to be smashing them. Enemy infantry caught out in the open. We just need to run out as fast as possible, get to that gun, send shells, get corrected. Um, but obviously, none of that is possible without having the drone operator there flying. So, uh, in my view, the way that drones have changed things most, and it might be skewed because I'm an artilleryman myself, is that ability to be able to precisely correct artillery fire, which is just something that in the past you would have needed an actual forward observer there to be able to watch what's happening, which, you know, artillery works out to, 30 kilometers odd, like, so 20 miles, give or take. You're not going to have a forward observer out there. So, yeah, drones have really changed the way artillery works, but they haven't reduced artillery's role, I wouldn't say. Um, and there has been some other advancements in the way we use things, like um, when I work on the Grad rocket artillery, like, we have a lot. Again, we will have a drone flying for that. Um, we don't actually really, like, basically what you do is you have, the way a grad works is you have a target, but your target is a 300 by 300 meter grid square, because grad rockets don't all fire and hit the same point, basically. So what we do is we have a drone flying. They will watch. We will fire like two rockets. They will watch where those impact. We will correct slightly and then send the other 38 rockets at that point. Um, but with the way that rocket artillery works now is we have a lot of different types of munitions these days. Like, for instance, we have grad munitions that are basically thermite and phosphorus packed into the warhead of a grad rocket. So what it will do is it will airburst over a tree line, and it will torch that entire tree line, essentially. Which, you know, what people might not realize. I mean, it feels fairly obvious, but I don't know if it's just because I've actually served here, is how much this war is man versus environment as opposed to man versus man. What you're always thinking about, because of this constant surveillance of drones, is whether you can be seen from above, whether anything you're doing can be noticed. Like, as artillerymen, I work on the D30, which we usually sit, the closest we'll get to the front line is 5 kilometers. We usually sit about 7 kilometers out. But even that far back from the front line, something we have to constantly be thinking about is our rubbish, like our trash. Um, because if you are just, like, eating a load of shit and throwing trash out everywhere, a drone operator that flies around in that same area regularly, which they all do, is going to notice a buildup of trash or any change in that environment. And that's immediately going to tell that drone operator there's people living there. And they're immediately going to either hit you with FPV drones or get their artillery to hit you. So that's just an example of how this sort of man versus environment thing goes. But a big thing with that is, yeah, simple things like foliage, where you set up your positions, always having cover above you. So the way that we use grad rockets now, and being able to torch an entire tree line, not only is it going to smoke people out of that tree line, but also, and they're going to have no cover from above come morning. Um, So a drone's going to be able to see them sitting around in their trench line doing whatever, and we're immediately going to be able to send more artillery their way. Um, so yeah, drones have definitely changed everything on the battlefield. Um, Caused a lot of advancements, but in my view, what they've more done is enhanced artillery's role rather than reduced it. It's changed the way it works for sure, but it's changed that in quite a positive way. Um, and especially from the point of view of an artilleryman, it's a lot more fun being able to like know what you're hitting and like watch drone footage back and be able to like compare your timings between shots and where they impacted, as compared to before, when it would have just been, all right, we're going out, we're going to spam 30 shells at this random grid square, and you've got no idea whatever happened. Um, yeah, so artillery's role is definitely still large, um, but drones have changed everything.
Yeah, no, I actually was, I follow a bunch of like, Russian and Ukrainian Telegram channels, and one war blogger I follow, it's all in Russian, so I don't know how to, I can't speak it, so I don't know who it is. But he was mentioning that one of the biggest, as he mentions, like man versus nature in terms of when before everyone talks about like when the when offensives were done with like armored vehicles and such, that the biggest thing was about like kind of like how like muddy, you want like solid ground so your like tanks or armored vehicles could go on the offensive. But now, since we kind of are stuck in this kind of positional warfare where it's just like these like small groups of squads go ahead, that actually the biggest thing that helps is all this foliage, because if you want to like say take a village that's on like on more high ground, there's a bunch of tree lines around, and what happens is like they kind of do these like leapfrogging tactics, from at least what I read, is that, and they're able to just like kind of hide in these like tree lines and just kind of to take cover,
Yep.
and then just kind of that's how they're able to keep going forward. They could accumulate forces and then just keep going, ahead. And you're able to do that. But if it's wintertime and there's all the trees are gone, there's like it's very hard to like, you have to basically just go on a Leroy Jenkins move and just try to fly off to to go there, instead of slowly getting closer and closer and having that cover.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, and that's definitely a big thing I've noticed from a lot of ward channels, that they've mentioned about the importance of foliage and all that in terms of hiding and stuff. So, one interesting question for you: what is the most kind of coolest thing you've blown up, like that you blew up with your artillery piece?
Yeah. I do have a pretty good story for that one. It was back when we were deployed in Kursk. It was maybe my second rotation. think I think it was my second rotation ever at the front. But basically, we there was this French IFV that we had been hunting for at least 2 weeks. Um, our drone operator would see it all the time, running men and supplies back and forth in the front. God knows why they're using an IFV to do it, but we were hunting it for ages, and like every single day we would go out and we would like get told, "Yep, it's back." We'd head out. We would fire like 15, 16 shells at it, but even with a drone correcting, it is pretty hard to hit a fast moving vehicle with an artillery piece from 7 kilometers away with indirect fire. Um, but we were down to, it was our last shell, or I can't remember if it was the last shell. It might even our last powder cartridge because it's two separate things. Um, but it was our last one, and we're just like, ah, fuck it. It was like 4 in the morning or something ridiculous, and we're just like, ah, whatever. Just send it. We're never gonna get this fucking thing. Sent it. Um, actually managed to catch it and basically disabled it, and it ended up like half tipped over in a ditch. And then our drone guys finished off the infantry. But our gun, because all our guns have names, just like written in white paint on the barrel. They're mostly like Ares or Mars, because God of War. Um, our gun got a nickname Sniper for that, because it is pretty goddamn rare that anybody manages to get a moving armored vehicle. But that was a proud moment. We got given a little award that I have lying around somewhere. Just like, great job, guys! You blew up that vehicle. Solid effort. Um, if you're in the MOD, you get paid a lot of money for doing that. But we got our little piece of paper, and I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I've read that like when you take out like a Western piece of equipment, like especially kind of those rare ones, like a HIMARS or something like that. Where I remember they were gonna pay a lot of money for the first person who took out like an Abrams or a Leopard tank or something. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I assume when you like knock one out, it's very very good. But yeah, that seems crazy, being able to like knock a moving vehicle out with artillery. That takes a crazy amount of luck, I would assume. So that seems very cool. The what oh, in terms of artillery, what's like your like you mentioned you actually worked on multiple different types of artillery, in like Grad and
yeah.
then regular. What's your favorite type, and like what's like your favorite type of artillery, and like and such, like piece?
Well, I have you know, definitely the coolest thing around is a grad. Like, there's nothing like more enjoyable than loading up 40 rockets, driving out to the front, um, firing off 40 rockets in a matter of like 30-35 seconds, and then having to like very quickly get back in and drive away before the drones find you. There's nothing much that's like cooler than just sending like so much firepower so quickly. Um, and it has a great aesthetic to it. Like, I could watch videos of grads firing all day long. But I actually would say I prefer working on the Deathvisit, um, purely on the basis that it's more fun almost. Like, being out there, and it really gets the adrenaline up because you're out there under pressure. There's as soon as you start firing, you're going to have enemy drones looking for you. So whether you're working gunner, you're working loader, whatever you're doing, you're always keeping like ears up to the sky. Constantly, I thrive under pressure is a big thing with me. I very much enjoy it. So having that, like, hearing the whistle of incoming artillery coming at you, or like the buzz of a drone flying overhead, and trying to, fight through that, still get shells downrange. That's it's a big thrill for me. Um, so yeah, I think I still prefer, even though the grad has that coolness factor. I think I still prefer my trusty bit piece.
That's awesome, man. What's how's like life in general, as like kind of like the life in terms of like the average day on the front, like or and like kind of in the like kind of in the background to obviously people have an idea maybe like what an artilleryman does, but like when maybe you could talk about like what you do when you're maybe on the front, but then also like maybe when you're not necessarily on the front line, but maybe you're still in like that environment. Do you have, I know like there's a difference between like a wartime military and a peacetime military. I know there's like a lot of complaints. I got out recently, so I'm not in anymore. But one thing they were trying to implement, in at least in the Air Force, I think it's for almost all branches, at least in the military, is like they now want everyone to do like serve like uniform inspections with like their service dress and all that, and like all like the fancy uniforms. It's like it's like
Yeah, yeah.
every like making sure you're everything's like it's like 3 inches off the it's retarded, and no one likes it because my opinion as it's like, dude, we're here to join the military to kill people and like protect our country. That's like
Yeah.
the purpose. It's not here to fucking march around looking like a bunch of like, if you wanted to play dress up, go to like the Barbie show and all that. So it's I was annoyed by it, but like when you're in peacetime and you're just like kind of twiddling around, it's like, people higher up are like, oh, I want to feel important, and I'm gonna force everyone to like, you know, be do that. But is there any like in like kind of BS stuff that you have to do? I'm assuming probably like in a PMC, there's probably less bullshit. But is there like, when you're not doing like when you're rotated out, when you like, do you just have to just do your job and that's it, or is there like some other BS like, or maybe not even BS, but like, is there any like additional stuff you have to do as a person fighting, or is it just like, okay, your job is to fire, be an artilleryman, and then
Mhm.
that's it?
Yeah, so I'll cover sort of off the front life first, and then I'll run through like roughly what a day at the front looks like for an artilleryman. Um, so I mean, for us, because we're a PMC, there is none of that uniform bullshit. We basically, I mean, there's a running joke that we're the Taliban, because everybody runs around in terrible mismatched uniforms that absolutely infuriate me. I hate to see someone wearing like what I can't remember what it's called in the West. It's called like ATAX or something. It's like the moss camel in Russia. It's just called moss. But people run around with like moss trousers and then like a digital EMR shirt and then like a multicam balaclava. And it's just like totally like shithouse. Like I have a little game I like to play whenever I'm doing like public appearances and stuff. If I'm getting interviewed or anything, I know it's gonna happen. Like I did it today. I like to try and wear as many different camouflages as I can in one outfit, and just see if anybody notices because it's just ridiculous, like the lack of standards of it here. Um, but yeah, I think no, I think I know that if you're in the MOD, you're still going to be hit with like having to be all nice and properly dressed up if you're not at the front. You're still gonna you have to do lineup multiple times a day. You still do have a lot of that sort of bullshit going on. But it's about building discipline and things like that. So there is like an aspect to it. But
Yeah, that was the cope they used when
unfortunately,
they
yeah,
enforced that.
yeah.
Yeah, somehow knowing like how to like
um,
tie your tie will make you like fix airplanes better or something. That's something like that.
yeah, it's just to me it's quite ridiculous that you've got guys that are like, because if you've been rotated off the front, the last thing you want to be doing is wasting your time sorting out your uniform or having to get up at silly o'clock in the morning just to go and line up, um, have someone read your name off a list and then go back to bed, I guess. But in terms of like here, the way things work, you can sort of it's basically your own free time if you're not at the front. You can sort of do what you want. Like we have a lot of guys that like because Piatnashka is it's an original 2014 uh, Donetsk People's Militia unit. Um, we have a lot of local guys from Donetsk, and they're allowed to just live off base. Like if you're rotated off the front, they just go back to their families, live in the city, do what they want, basically. Uh, the only I mean, what I do is I sit and I read a lot of books. I play a lot of you know ancient games on my laptop as a nostalgia trip to my childhood. Um, and then uh, because we're artillery, the big thing that we have to do is just loading up trucks full of munitions to go to the front because we have like you know 5 or 6 different bases, and warehouses and stockpiles all around. And stuff doesn't magically transport itself to the front. Someone has to load it in the back of those trucks. So, we're sitting around on base doing nothing, so they might as well get us to do it. But yeah, besides the odd, every 2 or 3 days you'll have to go load up 150 shells in the back of a truck. Besides that, it's pretty much just like do what you want. 3 meals provided a day. If you want to go into the city at night, and I mean, like, drinking is banned in inverted commas. But it's like, as long as you don't drink in front of an officer, they don't care. Like, you can just sort of do what you want as long as things don't get too out of hand. Um, and the MOD, I know things are a bit different, but still, when you're off the front, it is. I mean, it depends how far off the front your base is, because I know a lot of guys who are like currently rotated off the front, and what they're doing is digging trench lines and building blindages, and all the fun stuff that really resting there. But for us PMC guys, being away from the front is pretty much just free reign to do what you want. Um, in terms of when we're actually at the front, um, in a 24-hour period as an artilleryman, we're gonna work maybe 2, 3 times. Um, we keep a stockpile of shells. Well, the way we do it is we keep multiple stockpiles of shells in different positions, basically, in case a drone finds one of them or a stray artillery shell hits one of them. So we'll have at any time like between 70 and 100 shells at our position. So we can fire up to 70 to 100 shells per day, and then get a new delivery from our base the next day if so needed. So, but sometimes when you go out, because we have these drones flying, as I was saying, like, it's not like you're just going out and spamming shells. You're precisely um, dialing in on a target, essentially. So sometimes we'll go out, we'll only fire 6 or 7 shells, because we get our target. That's it. And we just get a call over the radio, good job, guys, they're all dead. Go back home. Um, so we'll maybe work 2, 3 times a day. And sometimes we will fire, 40 shells in one go. Sometimes we'll only fire between 5 and 10 shells. And then the rest of our time is spent just, relaxing. People would be shocked at the quality of life you get at the front of this war. Like, we have a generator running at all times. Obviously, a massive thing because of drones is having constant communication. So we will have Starlink, or a Russian allegory of Starlink. Um, so we have Wi-Fi. We can, do whatever you want. You can, I mean, technically, you're not really supposed to phone people when you're at the front, but rules get broken. You can sit, watch YouTube, or like I play a lot of GTA 5 online on my laptop. Um, that's what I spend like a lot of my time doing. Sit and play War Thunder with the guys. Like, you know, that downtime that you have in between working every day is, you can't go outside really, because there could be drones at any time. But I mean, being stuck in a basement or a blindage in a trench line, the quality of life is pretty good. Like, uh, one of our guys, we have like a young guy on my crew. His call sign is just Donbass. He's a local, but he just brings his PS5 and a TV, um, and we'll just sit and play like FIFA or Mortal Kombat and you know, can't remember what's he been playing recently. He's been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed recently, a lot of God of War. Like you can just sort of do what you want. The thing is that we're always on call. Essentially, we could get that call at any minute. You need to be ready to drop everything, stick on your armor, and run out to the gun. But that free time in between can just be spent doing pretty much whatever you want. Like, I mean, we have to cook our own meals, wash the dishes, and the sort of the mundane stuff that you don't think about. But yeah, an average day at the front line is pretty good. Like another big thing with drones is thermal cameras. Basically, Ukrainians love their thermal cameras on their drones, but they're night thermals. Like they very rarely have day thermals. Um, so that's a huge problem for artillery. Um, it's going to be just like you're basically sitting ducks if you're outside at night with 4 or 5 of you standing around a gigantic glowing gun. Because artillery pieces get pretty damn hot after firing a couple of shells. Um, so we don't tend to work at night at all, um, unless there is a planned assault or something. We'll if that's happening, or like if our storm guys need rotated, sometimes we'll go out, we'll fire smoke shells or something, either just suppress with normal shells or fire smoke shells at the lines in between the Ukrainian lines and our lines, so that our storm guys can get safely rotated in and out. We'll do that at night. We'll be forewarned. Like, well, our commander will say, like, "All right, guys, at 3 in the morning, you're going to need to get up. You're going to need to be out there, fire X number of shells at Y point, basically." Um, but if that isn't happening, you are, you know, going to bed. You're getting a straight 8 hours sleep minimum. Like, unless you're getting called to work in the morning, like, you can just sleep in as long as you want, pretty much. From there, you're just going to be doing, as I say, the mundane stuff, keeping the place clean, washing the dishes. You're cooking for 5 people. But beyond that, Starlink is Elon Musk's greatest gift and also, worst punishment to man because, I mean, the Ukrainian military wouldn't exist without it. But I do enjoy playing GTA 5 at the front.
Yes, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons. Like, maybe like Ukraine could be defeated a bit, faster, but you might have to go away without having any like computer games and stuff for like a little bit. So you have to kind of weigh
Yeah.
them. But
Yeah. Big
um,
pros and cons, It's a difficult choice.
yes. What's it in your opinion? What's the reason? Like, obviously, everyone is trying to figure out like why is like there's this just in this positional conflict. Now, as someone who follows it literally every day, and I make weekly videos on it, I know technically it's not. Like, a lot of people think literally it's frozen when no, the Russians have been advancing slowly, yes, but they've
Yeah.
been but in terms of like how much gains are having after like a multi-month offensive, it's not as big as someone would expect. So it's like it's kind of like not like a frozen thing, but definitely like more of a positional, like a small scale conflict. Like, why is it like that? And is it my opinion? A lot of people think it's because of drones, but is someone there like why is it where the Russian army can't like do some sort of like penetrating offensive to try to like break the Ukrainian lines? Like, why is it? Why can't they do that?
Um, Drones are an aspect of it, but it's the way that I sort of look at it is more just like ISR in general. The amount of intelligence that both sides have, the like very ready access to satellite images. I mean, the US is constantly flying. surveillance drones across the Black Sea and around the Baltic states, feeding information to Ukraine. There's just a real difficulty with being able to amass any large number of troops, vehicles, anything in one space to be able to actually make one of these, big arrow offensives in inverted commas. Um, yeah, I think it's just a wider problem of the sheer volume of intelligence that both sides have, considering this is very much like a peer-to-peer conflict. Like Ukraine had the largest and best trained military in Europe before the war started. Um, and I mean, the guys that were part of that military are pretty much all now dead, but they still had all that experience and they've now been fed absolutely everything from the West that I think is just a real problem of if you amass any amount of troops anywhere, you're going to get caught out badly. Um, and another factor with drones that people probably don't think about very often, um, like not every single drone is going around trying to kamikaze something or dropping a mortar round on someone. A big thing with drones is dropping mines. We have an issue with it constantly. Like every single time we're rotating in or out of the front, we're always watching the road in front of us because you never know when a drone is going to drop a mine there. They can drop mines like 15, 20, 30 kilometers behind where the actual front is. So there's a real difficulty in even being able to move large numbers of vehicles or anything, considering it's like pretty much impossible to keep an area demined. And both sides love their mines anyway. Like what we say is, it's eyes down, ears up. That's the rule that we have. Ears up for the drones, eyes down for the mines, because those are our two biggest problems. Um, so yeah, I think it's more just an ISR problem in general, rather than like people always thinking about like drone surveillance across the front. It's not that they have a Mavic drone 5 kilometers that matters. It's the fact that they know if you're 30, 40 kilometers behind the line and you're trying to amass a number of troops. If that happens, you're just begging to get a HIMARS on you. That's essentially the way it is. You just can't amass these large numbers of troops. What that then results in is a very sparsely populated front line, um, where the assaults that are actually made, a lot of the successful assaults are incredibly small numbers. Um, and drones, again, play a big factor in that. But yeah, I think it's just a problem of both sides having so much intelligence that getting together, even a few hundred men, is a massive risk, that you're just going to get hit before you make it anywhere near the front. I mean, on that though, uh, a good friend of mine who is our chief drone operator, he had the pleasure of getting to watch the North Koreans work in Kursk. And the way the North Koreans worked was essentially like, I mean, what Russia gets accused of doing, these like meat waves and inverted commas, which anybody that knows anything knows you can't actually put together a meat wave, never mind actually get one out there. Um, but that was essentially how the North Koreans worked. And that really overcame the problem of FPV drones or anything like that. Because of how sparsely populated the front is, the main way that Ukraine relies on keeping us back is drones. But you can only have so many drones. and you can only get so many drones up in the air so quickly. The North Koreans simply overwhelmed them. They would just go and be like, all right, 80 guys, get up, go over and take that one house. And every single time that I'm aware of from this guy watching drone footage, he said it worked. They took very high casualties in a very short period of time, but they simply overwhelmed the Ukrainian positions and managed to take them. Whereas Russia, um, being sort of almost too afraid to actually, and I mean very reasonably too afraid to just throw 80 guys over the top and be like, well, we're gonna lose half of them, whatever. Um, Russia being too afraid to do that was actually taking more casualties just over a longer period of time because of how long that front sits static, and you have drones and artillery coming in. So I think the way to do things, at least in some sectors of the front, is to just try and amass, not a huge number of troops, but a reasonable number of troops and simply overwhelm positions. And it's not going to move at lightning speed, um, but it is still possible to make those advances using, you know, very middling, less than 100 men. Because, as I say, if you try and amass any large number of troops, you're going to get hit. And I've we've been hit here enough times to know it. um, and I suppose another problem that people don't think about is, um, just how stupid people can be. Like, just with your what you're posting online, because everybody has internet and everybody has social media now. Um, and people don't realize quite how good, um, these guys are that geolocate stuff. Like we had it here. It was before I came, but it was literally like some a medal ceremony or something. Basically, some guy put up a video of a guy getting awarded a medal, and within like 48 hours, I think, maybe even 24 hours, might have been next day, but it was pretty damn quick. They had HIMARS on our base and killed a good like 130 people, um, simply because you've got folk cutting about with phones, posting stuff online. Um, and there's another problem with how how well rules are kept to, essentially, because officially speaking, SIM cards are banned, um, within the military. You're allowed your phone. You're allowed to be on Wi-Fi. You're not allowed a SIM card, so that you're not, connecting to cell towers or anything. Because that's another big way Ukraine locates bases. Is what they look for is a couple of hundred, phone signals all lighting up in a small area where there really shouldn't be, and then they'll just strike it. Um, so yeah, I think the main problem is just the volume of intelligence both sides have.
And what would you like? What would if let's say you were able to talk to Putin or maybe talk to Gerasimov, or talk or not or talk to Borisov. Sorry for mispronouncing these names and all that, but if you're able to talk to like the head of the MOD or or Putin himself or Gerasimov, and said, hey, as someone who's actually on the front, like this is what you need to like this is what I would suggest changing in terms of like these high level policy change that could help us win this war. Like, what would you tell them?
Well, there's a huge one that I don't really see people talk about at all. Um, it is simply that Russia's drone production and the actual Ministry of Defense's drone production is absolutely terrible. Um, where we're lucky because the leader of our brigade slash PMC, Accra, he buys all of the drones for our guys out of his own pocket. Um, but if you're not so lucky to have that sort of guy in command of your brigade, battalion, regiment, then you are, as a drone operator, you are going to be buying your own drones out of your own pocket, or you're going to be going around. This is it's very, very common in the MOD, um, going around and begging fellow soldiers and Sturmovic's and asking them for money and saying, "Oh, we need drones for the unit. We need money, guys. We need." And drones aren't cheap either. I mean, in terms of a military munition, they're cheap. But for guys to be buying them out of their own pocket, these things are not cheap. Um, so to me, it's ridiculous that we have the vast majority outside of a few specialized units of our drone units are buying drones out of their own pockets. It seems like a thing that is so simple to produce and so simple to get done. And yet people are relying on scrounging money together from, you know, their brothers in arms, buying them themselves, or relying on humanitarian aid companies, in inverted commas, providing drones for them. I think the main thing that needs to change in the big picture and in the logistics and such is simply putting together some solid drone factories and getting drones out to our guys.
And you know you could be this could be because we've seen the source with the Garan drones where the production is like multiplying really faster and faster. And I read somewhere that now its production is so high from just that one factory where they're producing all the Garan drones where they're they're gonna in the future, probably later this year, be able to send like 1,000 of them every day almost, and not be able to harm their stockpiles. And it's like, if they could do it for a Garand drone, which is much more complex than um, a smaller drone, like, you would think they would, take, do some sort of industrial scale mobilization type thing where they, the state just directly, sets something up, or, has a company force, make something, like, yeah, I don't know why they're so kind of bad, maybe because like drones are so new, but you would think like, because drones have, people have known the importance of drones for probably 2 years now. And it's like, you would think they would set something up fast, but yeah, that's definitely well,
Yeah,
in terms of like other things. There's a like in terms of like how this war is being fought. There's is there any like for example, there's like about the like the monkey Putin meme and all that about how sometimes Putin like
yeah, yeah,
he acts like a monkey. But the like for example, one big thing I always thought of is like like taking out like Ukraine's like electrical system, and it's like why why is that, like why are the hydroelectric dams still operating, like why are all these
yeah,
big substation, like like and I know for a fact, I'm not someone who's is in the Kremlin, but I know for a fact that the Putin has deliberately, or at least his administration has deliberately kind of like tied the hands of the Russian military, because he has some sort of, he wants to like maybe not make the West pissed off, or maybe like he has some sort of like still has this boomer sort of Ukrainian brotherhood feelings in him, and he doesn't actually want to go full throttle on them. But like, is there any like sort of like restrictions on like rules of engagement that like kind of are hampering Russia's ability to like actually finish this war off faster than it currently is?
yeah. Well, for sure. I mean, I think pretty similarly to you in that I think Putin is. I think he's always wanted to be somewhat like accepted by the West, essentially. Um, and I think that's what he's tried to do. If you look throughout his career, he's been very eager to like become a partner of the West and to be seen as an equal to them. And he was scorned by them a lot of times. So I think he's also quite bitter over that fact. But I think somewhere deep down in him, it's quite clear that he's still obsessed with this sort of his international reputation and not being seen as the bad guy and being able to reconcile with the West. And that definitely has held us back in many ways. Like, as you say, I mean, even simpler than like the electrical grid or the dams is bridges. Like, we could be, I mean, those Soviet bridges can sustain quite a lot. But we have the munitions to be leveling bridges, cutting off supply routes, and it's not being done. Electrical grid, a big one because it's seen as like civilian infrastructure or whatever, and Putin's afraid of, I don't know, being accused of letting the Ukrainians freeze in winter because, as you say, this whole like brother people thing. Um, I think that's definitely held us back. And I mean, I'm somewhat of an extremist in these matters, in that I mean I would support the use of small 1 kiloton nuclear warheads being used. I don't think the West is ever going to respond with you know strategic nukes over. Let's wind back time and say Avdiivka had a small tactical nuke used on it. It's not like there's going to be a terrible loss of civilian life. The radiation dissipates. I mean, rule of nines, I think it is. So within 24 hours, 9%. Within 48 hours, 99%. 72 hours is 99.9%. You just keep adding a nine on. Um, like, there's not much downside to the use of small tactical nukes in my mind. I would have been using them on these Ukrainian massive fortified strongholds, and I frankly don't see the difference between sending like a million fabs at something and sending a small tactical nuclear warhead. I mean, they're both just two large explosions to me. One of them just takes a lot of time, and one of them's very quick.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, we're definitely hands tied behind the back. That's 100%.
yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of I do think this could have been done a lot. Like, I do think that if Putin was more like, this is the type of guy who wasn't even striking like barracks until like a week into the
Yeah,
war, because he thought like the Ukrainian military would somehow like join the Russian military for some reason. But
yeah,
like I'm not like a doomer in terms of that. I do think Putin has done a lot of good things. I just think he could be better, and I really despise these. I call them peace tards. And such, because a lot of these people who follow this war, they kind of want to be like, they want to act like they're on, they want to look good rather than feel like, and feel good rather than actually fight for a good cause. And a lot of these people, they, whatever like, I was sounding the alarm when Putin was wanting to do those talks. I thought he was gonna, cuck out and do some sort of like ceasefire agreement. And I
yeah,
was talking about how that would be a horrible, horrible deal. And there's a lot of people like, oh, having a ceasefire would actually be really, this would be a strategic defeat for Ukraine. Like, no, this would be a strategic defeat for Russia. And like, I the reason why I care for this conflict, is like, because the same things we talked about in the beginning of this interview, but same thing as fighting in terms of against this kind of demon that is the collective West, but also like, I do believe that the Russian people in Ukraine were being oppressed, well, are being oppressed. And I'm half Russian myself. My mother came from the Soviet Union, and the
mhm.
and so I kind of grew up with the Russian language spoken, and having Russian food. Like, I love pimeni and plov and all that. But the
Oh yeah,
yeah, and and I had this like Russian culture growing. So I do think the Russian cause is a good cause. But it's like, if Russia cucks out, and it's like doesn't achieve its aims of liberating the Russian lands that are rightfully theirs historically, and doesn't help protect their the Russian people there and demilitarize Ukraine and make Ukraine not a Western aligned state anymore. Um, I mean, I'm in a bit of a extreme in that I think almost all of Ukraine needs to be taken. Like, I just don't think there could be, as long as the current government, even if you get rid of Zelensky, just be another retard. You need to have Russian tanks
Yeah,
in Kiev to actually and occupy it to actually have any sort of to make Ukraine not this what I call the dagger on the stomach of Russia. If you leave them alone, they will. Everything else is just piece of things on paper. You can't. Even if he's like, oh well, we'll be not in NATO. Well, okay, maybe officially they're not going to be in NATO, but then they'll still be trained with NATO. They'll still get logistics from NATO, intel from NATO. They'll be in NATO in all but name. And it's like,
yeah,
I care more about the actual outcomes. And there's a lot of people who just want to look like they're good, and advocating for peace makes you look like a good guy, rather than advocating that you actually know the fight's not over yet. The war still needs to be continuing, and you don't look like a good guy if you want to continue war. But
well,
I
yeah,
care more. I care more for the results and the actual, the cause, and the cause has not been completed yet. But a lot of people are just, they're just these people who think, if the MOD listened to them, Russia would not improve. They literally they if you talk to some of these people, you would think Russia never did anything wrong in this war, and they've been successfully doing everything perfectly. There has been nothing wrong at all, and obviously the failure is the biggest teacher, and you have to first acknowledge that you
yeah.
had a failure to learn. But yeah, so I definitely think there's a lot more that could be done with how Russia's fighting. But I do think in the ultimate trajectory, it looks like Russia's winning. We obviously,
Well, yeah,
yeah, and I do think Russia's victory will be assured. It just, as we see right now, we saw that like kind of, I don't know how, but you probably follow it as close as I do because you're actually there. But we have this kind of breakthrough that just happened a few days ago near Pokrovsk, that like that was
yeah,
like almost like a 15-kilometer breakthrough almost. And Ukraine had to deploy Azov and everything over there to try to even contain it. But it looks like Ukrainian lines are now slowly just not collapsing, but slowly but surely just getting depleted. And it does seem like we're in this trajectory towards winning. But like, what do you think? Do you think like in terms of what you're seeing and from what others are saying, do you think like do you think this war is going to take a few more years? Is it like around maybe within a year or two that Ukraine will finally buckle? Like in your estimation, like what do you think?
um, my assessment would be maybe autumn, like, yeah, autumn or this time year 2027. I could see it coming to an end. I still think there's a good couple of years left in this. Um, and as much as I have my problems with the Russian government, I don't think they're going to cuck out for some peace deal. I think Russia knows that they're in a winning position here, and the West doesn't really have too much to offer Russia. Um, I mean, I don't know what else the West can really do. Like, what are they going to do? Throw us another sanctions package or, like, send some more weapons? I mean, it always goes the same way. So I don't think we're going to have some, like, cockeyed peace situation, thankfully. But I do think it'll be a long, slow process. But I absolutely support that. I'm all for it. I'm here till victory or death either way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
maybe once you liberate, I could visit former Ukraine and we could have a chat in Odessa or something. That'd be pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've not forgotten the Odessa firebombing in 2014. It's a Russian city. That should be taken too. I've not forgotten that Kharkov was one of the biggest uprisings during the Russian Spring. It was quelled because the people up in Kharkov didn't take up arms. They tried to go about everything peacefully, and then Right Sector came in and put an end to it. Some Russian city as well, and Kiev is too. Um, I I would hate to see some pathetic peace deal signed. I'm much more, on Medvedev's side when it comes to these matters.
Yeah. My hope is that obviously the Russian position is they just want those four oblasts, but obviously I think they need to go beyond that. But I
Yeah,
actually do think one of the interesting things about that is that because of the demands, is that it actually gives Russia I think it's actually pretty brilliant in case if Putin designed it like it is, that because Kherson and Zaporozhia are like half of them are on the other side of the Dnieper River, and no one is ever going to be crossing that ever. Just the way just the way this war is being fought,
Yeah.
it's going to be really really hard for you to do anything. Is that Russia will have to basically take the entire eastern part of Ukraine, and then like at that everything on the other side of the Dnieper River, and then you'll have to like maybe use and then only then can they actually start trying to like, and they probably like just use Belarus to try to just bypass it. And but that means you'll have to go from the north, and that means you have to take all of central Ukraine before you get back
Yeah.
to the south of Ukraine, and then by then you could take Odessa as well. So my hope is that instead of I do think that even if Putin gets all four oblasts, that's not it. There's still Kharkov, there's still Dnipropetrovsk, there's
Yeah.
Kiev, there's Odessa that still need to be taken. But I do think that demanding their full administrative borders, which can't be conquered by military force, and Ukraine will never give them up,
Yeah.
will basically just assure that Russia has that kind of card of like, well, where do you have a basic, and then my hope is that as they advance, maybe they do another referendum in like Kharkov, and then I know it's gay and fake
Yeah.
and everything like but I
Yeah.
don't really
Yeah.
care,
But
but it's just trying to be like a lawyer retard, but
yeah. Yeah.
uh, I guess a final question, a kind of more of a personal thing. What's kind of your plans after, like kind of let's say, like after this war, like do you have a place you want to like, let's say let's say you do get citizenship. I know that's one big thing you've been trying to go for, but let's say
Yeah. Yeah.
you get it. Uh, do you like what's your plans after the war, and like such like that?
Um, it's difficult to say. Um, I think what I would like to do is go back and try some basic mundane civilian life job and see how I go on with it. The thing is that I've come to love what I do, um, and it gives me meaning and purpose in life, gives me a direction, and I think it's made me a lot better person. What I've had to go through here, because when you could die any minute, you know, it really gives you a lot of time to reflect on yourself and like to think about the fact like that any day can be your last. I mean, for anyone anywhere, any day could be the last. You could walk out and get hit by a bus, but when it's shells flying at you, it makes you realize that a lot more. Um, so it sort of makes me more live in the moment and more think about things as what's what do I want to leave in the world? What do I want to leave behind? What do I want my life to have been? And in that manner, I'm not entirely sure that just going back to working some a mundane desk jockey job or something like that. I'm not entirely convinced that's going to be for me. So I've been exploring my options, and one of the benefits of being in a PMC is the sort of people that you meet and the connections that you can make. So I became well acquainted with a lot of people that do, work in Africa or, former Wagner personnel and, even things over in like Afghanistan and like all sorts of places. Um, so I think if I can't adjust back in civilian life, which I'm not entirely convinced is going to go too well. Um, because already, like, I find that when I'm away from the front and I'm stuck here, doing nothing with my life again, even though I'm still in a war zone in inverted commas, like, yeah, I can sort of lose that, the happiness that having a purpose in life gives me. So I think I will end up continuing this line of work somewhere else. I mean, at this point, who knows where? And I'm happy to continue fighting for Russia's interests abroad, whether it be in, Africa or wherever they end up. I mean, I know there's Russian PMCs in Iraq as well. Um, but yeah, I'm relatively set on this, I mean, it's not quite a sustainable way of life, but it's certainly one that I enjoy and gives me a lot of purpose. So it is something I would like to continue with, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I understand. Like, I actually really admire that. Like what you mentioned about how living in the being in the military and actually being having your life under threat actually makes you appreciate the present moment. And actually, because I think every single day is a miracle. I think every day
Yeah,
is a miracle from God in terms of, like, we it wasn't a guarantee that we were supposed to be born, or even that, to, like, I could have died in my bed. I mean, I'm a healthy, guy in his 20s. I'm it's not like I have some like terminal cancer or anything. I, for all intents and purposes, like, I should be thinking like, oh, I could live forever. But like, the thing is that that's not a guarantee. Like, I could have, as you mentioned, get run, I could have crashed my car and died. Fucking maybe like a meteor came out of nowhere and just kills me right now.
yeah,
Like, the thing is that every day is a miracle. And I think that, obviously when your life is in danger, you start realizing this. And I think a lot of people in the West, like, since they have so comfy lives, that they don't really, they just kind of fall into the stupor of just like taking every day for granted. But when people kind of take things with gratitude, thinking about what they do have instead of comparing themselves with, and realizing that happiness doesn't come from an outside source, it comes from within. It comes from your own soul. It's, our minds are super powerful, and the lens we put on reality literally determines our reality. And once you realize that the power of that in
yeah,
your mind, you realize, look, well, why the fuck would I want to put like a depressed filter on? I'm going to put on a filter and look at it things optimistically. I'm going to look at things with what I do have. Like, I have my eyesight, I have my hearing, I could touch things, taste things, I have these connections with
mhm,
friends, I have these experiences. And obviously, like, even if, let's say, like, and one thing that you're doing is so admirable in terms of, like, you're actually fighting. A lot of people don't have that, coming there and actually fight, signing up and fighting for a cause is, I mean, at least you're doing, a lot of people kind of have these ideas, and but you actually are taking action, and it's very admirable in terms of what you've done. So even if you feel like sometimes you're like, I know I watched a little bit of the Russians with Dashi podcast, and you were kind of being a bit like downtrodden. But one thing I would
yeah,
say to like lift your spirits up is that, even if this might not be your fight per se, this might be like a Russian thing, but it's like you are helping a lot. You're helping, one of your Donbass friends maybe be able to connect with one of their family members that are separated in the Ukrainian side of
yeah,
Donbass. I remember early in this war, when one of these areas got liberated, and one of the DPR men were able to see his grandma again, because she was on, and they've been separated
mm,
for almost 8 years. And even if your small contribution that help that person be able to reconnect, and you're helping many Russian people able to speak their language freely, be able to appreciate their culture, their Orthodox religion,
yeah,
and you're actually protecting. You're actually, a lot of people in the West think they're fighting for democracy and freedom, when all they're actually doing is helping spread homosexual sex to a bunch of Middle Easterners, and democracy, which is all gay and retarded.
yeah,
But you're actually doing something that's actually meaningful. You're actually fighting for a cause that's actually, so even it might not be your cause per se, because maybe you're not technically Russian. You're actually, are doing some a really big, higher than life almost mission. So it's very admirable, that I want to say to you. And
yeah. Thank you.
yeah. And I guess last, just like a kind of like on a final note, like, kind of, we've been talking a lot about military stuff. What's like, what do you like? You kind of mentioned a few things about it already, but like, what do you like to do for just like, like, what do you like to do for fun? Like, what's your like, what does Jay like doing? Like, when you're not firing shells at the Ukrainian gay retards?
Yeah, yeah. I play a lot of games. I read a lot. Um, I like to try and keep my mind sharp. I like to learn new things. I like to improve the way I think and try and view things from not even like I don't like sticking in an echo chamber. I like to see things from other people's point of view and sort of consider that. And I'm relatively fluid in uh, what I believe, sort of. So yeah, I spend a lot of time reading. It's a great benefit of being here is that you do have so much free time. I make it through, I don't know, between 2 and 3 books a week usually. And then the rest of my time I spend, uh, nostalgia playing through like old Call of Duties, or like I've got like a PlayStation 2 emulator on my laptop. Um, Load up some like Need for Speed Most Wanted or some classics, uh, throwback to my childhood. Um, and then besides that, yeah, I mean, I watch some TV, but I find that TV and movies these days, it's like, well, once you notice that it's all sort of targeted propaganda in one way or another, it becomes quite difficult to put yourself through it, because half the time I just get annoyed, because I'm like, grumble, grumble, grumble. I see what message this is trying to get across to me, and I don't like it. Um, so I don't watch much TV these days, but occasionally I'll still go back and, like, I don't know. I've been thinking about rewatching The Wire recently. That's always a good one. Um, and then yeah, besides that, I've come to quite enjoy building things, as much as my job is destroying things. Um, like building stuff around base, like just taking like old ammunition crates and stuff like that. And then like recently we put together like a chicken coop, and we have chickens on base now for like fresh eggs. Um, or like just building random shelving units and stuff for my room or stuff like that. I've come to quite enjoy it. It's very satisfying to like, yeah, spend all that time on something, and then like, well, learning a new skill as well, and then spending all that time doing something, and then you have like a an end product in front of you that you can look at and be like, yeah, I did that. So that's something I've definitely come to quite enjoy as well.
Awesome. Well, I think those are all the questions I had listed. Thank you so much for being in this interview and having this. I'll have this posted probably by tomorrow and such on my YouTube channel. And but yeah, thank you so much for being on. Do you
Yeah, no worries.
and if you guys want, for those watching, if you guys want to continue, I'm gonna try to get more guys for interviews on my channel. So if you want to see that, subscribe to my channel. And is there any parting words you want to say to the audience?
Ooh, be true to yourself. I'll leave you with that.
Very nice words. Well, it's moi ochi harosho druga Kelt, and it was a great honor to have you here. So I'm gonna end the recording now.